Welcome to The Planner's Perspective with Jessie Kara. This is the podcast for wedding planners and couples navigating South Asian weddings and everything that comes with them. Culture, family dynamics, money, design, expectations, and the real conversations no one prepares you for. I'm Jessie Kara, a South Asian wedding planner and educator trusted by couples and families when things get complicated. Here we go beyond timelines and Pinterest boards and talk about what actually happens behind the scenes. If you're a planner stepping into South Asian weddings or a couple who wants to understand the process more deeply, you're in the right place. Let's get into it. If you're listening to this, chances are you're either planning a South Asian wedding or you're a wedding planner who's curious about South Asian weddings and maybe even thinking about entering the space. And if that's you, I want to start by saying this. You are not crazy. You are not behind. And the things that you're struggling with are not because you're doing something wrong. This podcast exists because for years, I've watched people try to plan South Asian weddings using tools, advice, timelines, spreadsheets, and education that were never built for them in the first place. Everything out there is designed for mainstream weddings. The planners you buy at bookstores, the online templates, the courses, the timelines, even most of the advice you hear online. None of it accounts for the reality of South Asian weddings. And then, to top it off, when most people hear Indian wedding, they immediately assume Hindu wedding. Fires, mandaps, saath fere, 7 circles if you don't know what that is, without stopping to ask what culture, what religion, what region, or what traditions are actually involved. That lack of education creates confusion, stress, judgment, and honestly, a lot of harm. South Asian weddings are complex. They're layered. They're emotional. They're multi-day, multi-event, multi-family affairs. You're not planning one wedding. You're often planning 5 or 6 events back to back. And even as a guest, they can be absolutely exhausting. So imagine being the couple or the planner. I remember going into Facebook group years ago and feeling genuinely disheartened, reading posts from planners complaining about their clients being too demanding, families being too involved, or expectations being unreasonable. But what those conversations were missing was context, cultural expectations, family dynamics, generational pressure, and the reality that what some planners consider extra is actually completely normal in South Asian weddings. It's not really fair to complain about a client when you don't fully understand the world they're navigating. And that brings me to the part most people don't talk about, the systems. As I started building systems and processes in my own business, that disconnect became impossible to ignore. CRMs that couldn't handle multiple events, timeline software that didn't account for pre-wedding ceremonies, budget templates that treated a wedding like one single financial pot. But South Asian weddings don't work like that. Yes, maybe the overall budget is $300,000, but who's contributing what? Which family is hosting which event? How are the responsibilities divided? Even something as basic as photo video packages completely fall apart when you apply them to South Asian weddings. I have not seen a single package that truly accounts for how budgets should be split. For example, both bride and groom, both sides have teams at their respective homes in the morning of the wedding, right? For all the pre-morning stuff. And then there's the pre-wedding events, there's the post-wedding events, and then there's the reception, which is often hosted by the groom's family. So how does a clean divide down the middle of a package make sense? It doesn't. And when the tools don't fit, people start blaming each other or themselves. And the cost of that mismatch is huge. There is so much stress, emotional and internal conflict, brides' families trying to respect the groom's parents and not look cheap, parents taking out separate mortgages just to do things properly. Weddings being compared, family members, siblings being compared, budgets being compared. Times have changed, expectations have changed, but families are still carrying old narratives. Planners see beautiful South Asian weddings online and take them on without realizing the workload involved. Then resentment creeps in. And I'll say this openly because I'm guilty of it too. Not having proper boundaries, not clearly defining what is and what is not a part of the job, putting my own feelings aside to stay neutral in emotionally charged situations. For many planners, myself included, there are moments where you stop feeling like an expert and start feeling like staff or servants instead of guides. Boundaries are hard in wedding planning in general, and family dynamics, cultural expectation, and multi-generational pressure, and it becomes a whole other ballgame. So, why talk about this now? For a long time, I didn't. I was raised in a generation where we keep our problems behind closed doors. There's already so much racism out there. Why give anybody more ammunition? But over time, I realized something really important. What I'm doing isn't exposing culture. It's preserving it. It's about honoring who we are while adapting to Western society, about not losing ourselves in the process, and not letting external opinions stop us from creating epic, meaningful celebrations. At the same time, I was having my own identity crisis. I'd allowed my entire identity to become the events that I produce. And I didn't want weddings to be who I am. I want them to be what I do. As I've worked through that, I realized that this is exactly the conversation I want to have. Because Indian weddings are not just about alcohol or arriving on horses or elephants or throwing a big party. They are layers of culture, family expectations, religious representation, power dynamics, love, pressure, pride, legacy. This podcast is for South Asian couples planning their own wedding, and it's for wedding planners who are curious about South Asian weddings and want to enter the market responsibly. I want this to be a place where you feel seen, where you realize you're not alone. Feeling like it's not just your wedding, but a family affair, that's normal. Wanting to honor your parents while also honoring yourselves, definitely normal. Feeling overwhelmed by decisions that seem bigger than flowers and colors, normal. Everyone warns you about the mother of the bride, but have you met an Indian mother of the groom whose golden star child is getting married? Or just her son, period? That dynamic deserves its own episode. This podcast exists because there are real, honest conversations that need to happen. Without filters, without judgment. We're going to talk about the complexities of multi-day events, family dynamics, money, boundaries, guest experience versus aesthetics, and Western wedding advice that simply just doesn't apply. I started my business in November of 2003. At this point, what have I not seen behind closed doors? Couples using their parents' money without understanding how to allocate it in ways that reduces stress and improves the guest experience. Difficult conversations no one wants to have. Emotions running high, very high. Expectations colliding. I'm only human, and I've had to learn how to put my own feelings aside while guiding families through moments that impact everyone in the room. And that perspective is earned. It's not theoretical. The goal of this podcast isn't to tell you what to do. It's to help you understand what you're navigating so you can make better decisions with more confidence, with more clarity, and eventually with more peace. If you're a couple, I want you to feel validated, educated, and excited about what's possible. And if you're a planner, I want you to understand what you're stepping into and how to do it with respect and integrity. And if you stay with me for a few episodes, my hope is that you feel empowered, not just to plan a wedding, but to navigate the layers that come with it. This is the planner's perspective, and this is just the beginning. If today's episode helped things click or gave you a new perspective, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss what's coming next. This podcast exists to support planners in doing their best work and to help couples feel informed, confident, and prepared as they navigate their very own South Asian wedding. If there's something specific you want me to talk about, an episode idea you'd love to hear, a planning story you want to share, or a question you're sitting with, there's a link in the show notes where you can send it all in. I promise I will read every submission, and many of them will shape future episodes. You can connect with me at www.jessykara.com or on Instagram at Jessie Cara. If you're ready to navigate South Asian weddings with intention and confidence, I'll see you there. And if this podcast is supporting you in any way, I would truly appreciate you taking a moment to leave a 5-star review. It helps more planners and couples find these conversations and keep the space growing. Until next time, trust your perspective and plan with clarity.